I'm Gary Nickerson,
And I'm Quinn Taggart.
and this is Outside My Window. Our guest in this segment is Janice Comeau. She's the current president of the Yarmouth Toastmasters Club. Toastmasters' mission is to help people sharpen their public speaking and leadership skills, and is part of an international nonprofit organization that exists in 149 countries, consists of 15,800 clubs, and is made up of 300,000 members around the world. Toastmasters began as a series of speaking clubs in Illinois. It was started by Ralph C. Smedley. He was the director of education for the YMCA, and he recognized the need for men in the community at the time to learn how to speak, conduct meetings, plan programs, and work on committees. Smedley carried this vision with him when he began working on the new YMCA in Santa Ana, California. On October 22nd of 1924, the first meeting of the Club Number 1 of Toastmasters International met. In Yarmouth, the club chartered on December of 2001. We look forward to seeing the club resume in-house meetings in the program room of the Western Counties Regional Library on Main Street in Yarmouth, and we welcome Janice Comeau. Hi there.
Hi.
Thanks so
Good
much
to be
for
here.
joining us.
Yes, it's my pleasure to be here.
So, first of all, obviously, you have not been able to have any meetings, with all the COVID restrictions and all of that. Were you able to do any sort of online business during that period, Janice?
Oh, absolutely. With this COVID interruption in March, we sort of wondered what were we going to do because, as you had mentioned, we've been meeting in the program room of the library for 20 years. And we had to come up with something like the rest of the world. So in April, we started talking about the possibility of Zoom meetings. Most of the members at that point actually hadn't been involved with Zoom. Myself, I had a Zoom account. So I suggested that let's give this a try, informally first, because we were new with this technology. We practiced among ourselves, and then when we felt we were proficient enough, then we opened our meetings back to the public so that they could join us. And it's had an advantage, actually, because we've had visitors to our club from all over the world, from the United States, overseas, India, even clubs in different parts of Canada, which obviously that wouldn't normally happen. So it has had an upside.
Did you find, Janice, when you opened it up digitally, that it changed the dynamic of how your normal meeting might transpire?
Yes. I think as a skill set in which you're usually involved with standing in front of an audience and getting that feedback in present time, be it people's body language, comments. As I'm sure you've experienced too, although you are connected with the Zoom, you have this screen, and it is a little bit different. And we had to adjust to that too. Normally, if someone has just finished giving a speech in person, of course, there's that round of applause. On our Zoom meetings, we have the emoji where you can do clapping hands, or we put our hands up in the air and sort of wave them. Not quite the same thing. So that has been a challenge, but we persevered, and we're actually looking forward to meeting again on the 16th of September in person. So we'll put perhaps that to bed for a little bit, although we are considering still having hybrid meetings.
Interesting. I was in broadcasting, a news broadcaster on radio for many, many, many years, and that never bothered me, sitting like I am now in front of a microphone. The only person in front of me is Quinn. But I was terrified, and still am to this day, of any time I had to speak in public. Absolutely terrified. And obviously, that is one of the many things that you teach. So if you can elaborate a bit, Janice, and What kind of foundation? What do you specifically help folks out with?
Ultimately, I think the biggest picture is that we're looking to help people grow in self-confidence. And the way that we do that is by helping them hone skills, like skill sets that enable them to walk into a room and feel confident. And those two things usually involve public speaking skills and also leadership skills. It's interesting, the people, the walks of life of people that come to our club. We've had people in human resources, librarians, town councilors, entrepreneurs, engineers, accountants, even although he wasn't in our club, even the astronaut Chris Hadfield was a Toastmaster member. And in all of these people, they recognized the need to have these skill sets. So I often hear, public speaking, that's my greatest fear. And I don't like to sell Toastmasters and we're going to teach you about public speaking because sometimes that scares people away. Rather, I say, we're here to help you grow in your confidence. And these are the skill sets that we're going to use to do it. We have, in terms of how do we accomplish this, we have an online program that's been developed by Toastmasters International, and it's called a Pathways program. And the Pathways program is based on competencies, be it leadership skills or public speaking skills, and it's also incremental in nature. There are 11 different paths that a prospective member could choose from. A person would do on an online assessment initially to figure out what their goals were, what kind of outcomes they would like to experience at the end of this program, and the feedback from that would determine what kind of program or pathway they would want to go in. We have, I think, the number one pathway that most people start off with is called presentation mastery. And that really hones in on public speaking skills. We also have many leadership skill pathways, some on innovative planning, persuasive influence, strategic relationships, dynamic leadership, to name a few. But the way that the pathways works is that once you have decided what kind of pathway you're going to engage in, say for myself, it would be presentation mastery, and this is all about trying to hone my skills as a public speaker. There will be 5 levels of competency in that pathway, and each level has particular projects that you're supposed to engage in. When you, at each project, you're asked to assess your knowledge. Say, for instance, one of the components of public speaking, as we know, is vocal variety. There's nothing worse than sitting in a conference maybe and listening to a presenter drone on. Vocal variety is very important. So we want to teach prospective speakers about incorporating that into their speeches. So once they assess their knowledge on the topic, and they then go on to actually incorporate these lessons into doing a speech. That is the part, and they do that in our Toastmasters meeting. So the Toastmasters meeting is really the hands-on of what you've been learning online. Once the person, and usually the speeches at the beginning are only 5 to 7 minutes long. Once a person has given their speech within the club, it's gently evaluated amongst our welcoming members. There's no hard critique, so to speak. It's about telling you, hey, what you did well, here's a way to tweak things if we heard the need, and we look forward to you going on to your next speech. So that's about the way that that's one of the ways that we engage people in helping them to learn public speaking. Our meetings, they're about an hour long. They are broken up into 3 sections. The first section is our prepared speeches. We have room for from 1 to 3 prepared speeches in our club. Subsequent to those speeches, we then have another section, and that's called Table Topics, and that's very interesting. Table Topics is trying to help you with impromptu speaking. Rather than having sat at home and worked on developing a speech, writing out the speech, practicing at home before you come to the club, Table Topics is such that you don't know what you're going to be asked to speak on most times. And our Table Topics master will draw from the audience and ask you to speak. The times for those speeches are between 1 and 2 minutes. It's that kind of perhaps like banter, if you envision perhaps being at a cocktail party and then all of a sudden you have to engage in a conversation with somebody that you haven't met before. It's that kind of skill set that helps, that you're honing there, just to be comfortable when you're not giving a speech that's prepared. And the last part of our meeting involves evaluation. We can't go forward unless we know how we've done and where the areas are that we can improve. So not only are we looking at the speeches that we gave and the table topics, but there's the whole leadership skill of being able to run a meeting, making sure it's timely, on task, that guests have been encouraged to participate or told how that the meeting rolls out, these type of things. So, and in order to be a good evaluator, there's another skill set that Toastmasters really have to have, and you have to be a good listener. You have to be paying attention. So it's not always about speaking. Sometimes there's the pause.
So I think you mentioned when you were talking about the online courses and so on that there was an end point. So is there an end point to joining in on Toastmasters, or is it very cyclical and at some point you just sort of graduate into being more of a mentor to new members? How does that part work?
Again, this whole program is self-directed. There are some people that have been in Toastmasters 20 years. Some people have been in 7. Some people have been 15. You can complete more than one pathway if you choose. So you can, in fact, be in Toastmasters for a long time. Now, in terms of mentorship, I'm glad that you mentioned that, because when a prospective member decides, yes, I'm going to be a member, and makes that step, goes online and tries to decide which pathway they're going to learn from, they are put in touch with an assigned mentor. And our assigned mentors are Toastmasters who have experience in the Toastmaster world. They will help that new member look at what their goals are, how they can achieve those goals within our meetings. It could be such that the mentor encourages the Toastmaster to perhaps sign up for meeting roles or try to get that first speech under their belt, these kind of things, giving them feedback. And then, again, if the new member has needs, they can reach out to the mentor. So the mentorship is really important with Toastmasters. Yeah, I'm glad you asked that.
So with that in mind, is the format the same around the world? Like if I was at a Toastmasters meeting or club in another location, would the layout be similar?
Pretty much. There are little individual tweaks that happen in some clubs as opposed to other clubs, but overall, the meetings tend to take on the same format. The resources that are online come in a multitude of languages, which reflect the international scope of this organization, so that is a help too. But generally speaking, one Toastmaster leaving one club, joining us online for the first time would probably feel quite comfortable because most of it would be familiar. Yes.
Perfect. So, who are your ideal candidates for membership? Are you targeting people as young as, say, high school age, or is it more geared towards young adult entry?
To be a member of Toastmasters International, you have to be over the age of 18. Who we're gearing ourselves towards, again, it is any person that is looking to increase their self-confidence in their capability of public speaking and leadership skills. And in particular, I've noticed, or I have read, that the current generation of millennials and younger are more inclined to be changing their jobs quite often. And when you change your job quite often, that means that you are going to have to be selling yourself. What better way can you sell yourself than to be versed in public speaking skills and leadership skills? And that's what Toastmasters gives the person, like an entrepreneur. Maybe they were in the back room working on an app, and the app is just great, but now they have to go out and sell it to investors. Well, you have to be able to sell your story. And speaking of stories, that is another avenue of public speaking that has really blossomed, and the recognition that the ability to tell story is important in selling people on ideas or engaging people. I think perhaps maybe we're tired of PowerPoints and statistics and numbers. We know in terms of the neurotransmitters that our brain lights up when we're engaged in a story, and this isn't lost in marketers, you know. So this is, again, a wonderful opportunity to learn that skill set, how to engage, how to write a story, how to engage your audience with vocal variety and body language, and use that story to sell yourself, perhaps, sell a product. It's who do we, which comes back to the thing, who do we target? We target anybody that sees a need for, I think, personal growth in that way.
So you're coming up on 20 years in December. Have you got anything fun planned for that?
I'm hoping so. We chartered in December, and our heads are starting to turn around and think about things like that, and perhaps there'll be a 20th anniversary / Christmas event. We'd love to have you stop by and take us in. In the past, our Christmas events have been quite fun in that we do sort of like a little bit of a mock meeting. We might have someone telling a Christmas story. Then we'll move on perhaps to the seasonal Christmas table topics, or it could be a fun debate. For instance, I think one year it was, which do you prefer? What was it? Which do you prefer? Clear Christmas lights or multicolored Christmas lights?
Oh, that's a big debate, that is.
Yes. It is.
Or artificial tree versus a real tree. These kind of
that's
things.
another one.
Yes. So we try to make things fun. Sometimes we have theme meetings too. Our last meeting, actually, I was the Toastmaster for that evening. I decided, well, it's back to school time, so let's have a back to school theme for our meeting. So our toast for the day, which we always start out with, was a toast back to lifelong learning. Our word of the day had something to do with education and learning. We moved on to table topics, our table topics master. Then she presented different aspects. I think she asked our members what their memory was of going to school when they were a kid. And I'm trying to think one other thing. Oh, I had asked when our members and guests were introducing themselves, I asked them to answer the question in terms of essential school supplies, which is essential for you, highlighters or Post-it stamps? So, and then sometimes you can get really lucky, and the speaker that is going to speak that evening may in fact be speaking on the theme. But anyways, we try to mix things up. Some meetings we have visitors from, I think twice we had a woman come virtually to our meeting from Ontario, and she was working on a pathway, and she was almost finished, and she wanted to get these presentations done. We had our former area governor. He was a graduate student at Dalhousie University, but during COVID at one point he was stuck in India. Still, he connected with us, although it was brutal on him because of the time change. But so every meeting is different because, again, there's also speakers choosing topics of their own choosing, so you never know what the speech is going to be about, right?
It's very interesting, Janice. I've learned so much just in the few minutes that we've been chatting with you about Toastmasters International and the local Toastmasters Club here. And I want to go back to what you were talking about, the tabletop topics,
Yes.
which helps people, as I want to reiterate what you said about, it's all about confidence building, but those table topics would be really good, I would think, just for an average person, and you mentioned that, to just engage in a normal conversation. Some people are uncomfortable in that scenario. Some people are shy, and so I guess that feeds into the confidence building of just sitting down with another person or two or three people and having a chit chat about the weather or what have you.
Oh, yes, absolutely. And that's the wonderful thing about Toastmasters, because while you might be practicing the skill set within that program room in the library, you take what you've learned and you incorporate it into your life outside. My Toastmaster journey actually began when I was working as a nutritionist at the Children's Hospital. Although I had gone to university and all those things, I was tasked with doing a lot more public speaking than I had training for. I was having to become a member of many different local organizations. I was teaching medical students, nursing students, and also parents. So that I joined I guess it was a Telstar Toastmasters Club in the Maritime Tell building at the time. That's where I first started with Toastmasters. But then I look at the journey of my life, and I think of some of the things that I have used these skill sets for. For instance, for a while I used to be on CBC Radio, part of an on-air book club called Speaking Volumes. Well, my confidence to do that wasn't innate. It came from having a long history of practicing in Toastmasters. I've also been a storyteller at a few fundraisers. Again, this is something that I initially never aspired to, but in time discovered, hey, I really like storytelling, and then Toastmasters was just a venue to help me hone these skills. So if we get back to the table topics, yes, the table topics are a fun way to try to just get up there and tackle a subject that you weren't engaged with a few minutes before. And the wonderful thing about Toastmasters is you can sort of say, well, gee, I'm not really familiar with this topic, but I'm happy to tell you about X, Y, and Z. That's just a skill set too, learning how to turn the conversation around. So Toastmasters, yes, there are these skill sets that professionals may use, but there's also skill sets that we as humans who love story, who love connecting with other people, would love to use and grow with. That's what Toastmasters provide you. I mean, Chris Hadfield, who's been in the space lab or whatever you call that, he recognized the need for Toastmasters, correct? And of course now, he's got life experience of which he's a paid speaker wherever he goes. And just look at the growth of something like the TED Talks. People want to be engaged. This is an affordable way to learn those skill sets.
You make a really good point, Janice, when you were talking about your own personal life experience. No matter what we do in life, whether we're retired, whether what job we have, we never know if we're going to be put in a situation, as you mentioned, where we're going to have to speak to more than two or three people. We may be asked to go to a friend's wedding and say a few words, or perhaps a eulogy at
Yes.
at a funeral, or you may want to join an organization you're asked to speak. So yeah, this really prepares you for any kind of situation, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah, as you mentioned, the speaking at weddings, how many times have people been asked, "Wow, can you give the toast to the bride?" And it's like people cringe. Or as I know one of my Toastmasters, she was asked to give a toast. Initially she was reticent, but then she just drew on her experience within the club, and it all went well. She couldn't be happier. So you just never know where these skill sets will take you and feed into your life.
In this day and age, Janice, with 15-second attention spans and emojis and acronyms and all the like, how do you kind of break people from that sort of habit and get them into a more formal speaking and or writing kind of layout?
It takes time, and it's like any skill set. You build one strength on top of the other. I think what helps to hammer home the importance of honing this skill set is again understanding the neurochemistry of our brains and how wired we are to connect with other people. It's no accident that cell phones are addictive. They're addictive because we're like Pavlov's dogs, and when we hear the ding, it's because we want to connect. We have to check that phone. We don't want to miss what's going on. So for the person that is just starting out reticent, when you explain the impact of what they're doing, I think that it helps them get a sense of the importance of what they're doing, to be more engaged. But the other thing, you talk about people that like, if you're tweeting or whatever, and is it 18 characters that people are now doing? I forget the exact number. But the other thing is, have you ever been in the audience and listened to someone who went on and on and on in a speech? That they were supposed to give a 5-minute speech, and 45 minutes later they're still giving a speech?
That just reminds me of the leaders debate the other night.
I was just thinking the same thing.
Well, yes. And so that, it's like, I guess, the bell curve of life. Too short isn't a good thing, and too long isn't a good thing either. And that's another thing that Toastmasters meeting will teach you. We're very time-oriented. We want to learn that skill set of being timely. We don't want you to be a Toastmaster and drone on and have people looking at their watches and wanting to vacate the room because you've been going on too long. It's a challenge, yes, to sit and listen to a debate or whatever on television and think, wow, where did they get their training? Or there's a lack of training, or...
I think a new round of members can certainly come from all of the Canadian politicians. I don't think there's too many of them that are very eloquent in their speaking anymore. And I mean, personally, I try hard. I don't like to listen to my voice on recordings, and I don't know whether that's inherent, and a lot of people are like that or not. But I don't like it. Gary doesn't like it, but. When I do my editing, I do listen to see whether or not I'm umming or eyeing or, any of that kind of stuff. And I'm sure that aggravates you as well when you're listening to certain politicians speak. But from that, does does that factor into some of the teachings as well? Is to try to make sure that you're articulating properly, you're not umming and ahhing, you're not dragging
Yes,
your heels.
yes. In fact, we have many roles that people take on in a Toastmaster meeting. We have an timer to be timely, but we also have a person called the ah counter.
Ah,
Aha!
Like
So
that.
the ah counter is listening for those very things, those ahs, two words that we often hear. I'm certainly guilty of that, and you will have heard that this afternoon while I've been on the phone, are ands and so's.
yes.
It takes some skill set to learn that a pause is just fine.
For my day job, I have to do 99% of my contact with my clients via phone or now with web meetings. And the challenge, of course, is trying to keep them engaged, understand what their capacity level is, and then be able to get the information into a format that's going to be at their level, right? Because we deal in technology related items, and sometimes not everybody's that techie oriented, right? So I always like to know who my audience is. I always like to be able to choose the right vernacular to accommodate that scenario so that it doesn't come off condescending or patronizing or something along that line. And you get it at a level that they're going to grab and grasp. But when I do it in person, and I share Gary's fear of public speaking, even though the subject matter is my mainstay and I'm as comfortable as can be with the subject matter, when I have to get up in front of people and do it, I find that part really just takes me off my game.
Well, you wouldn't be alone in that. One of the, I should say, I read once it was actually a yoga magazine, and I've carried this piece of advice with me, and it was about public speaking, if you can imagine, in a yoga magazine. But the point was, they said, to still that fear, you have to reframe what you're doing. Rather than making this a pass-fail kind of event, reframe this in your mind in that if you said to yourself, the speech that I'm about to give really is, number one, a conversation with you. Number two, it's a gift from me. Now, anybody that receives a gift from someone certainly would be congenial, don't you think?
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah.
So I think that little piece of advice has stuck with me because it makes sense, and I've certainly shared that along my Toastmaster journey with other Toastmasters who are feeling the same kind of things that you're feeling. And that's not to say, so many years in that there are moments that I don't have a moment of feeling unsettled. But again, it's about thinking of, okay, this is a gift. This is really a conversation. Take a breath, slow down. You'll be okay.
I think again with my day job, I've had the opportunity to have hundreds of conversations over time, and it's allowed me that what's the word I'm looking for, flexibility, I guess, for lack of a better word, of being able to converse with a variety of different people on a global scale. And do you find when it comes to Toastmasters that regionality can play in a little bit towards the skill sets as well? Like if you were in the United Kingdom or Europe or in Asia, that things would be vastly different?
There's a recognition in Toastmasters International that one needs to be cognizant of the cultural norms of the particular country that you're in, and how they play out when you are presenting as a Toastmaster. So yes, there is that bit of regionality, but I think the bigger picture that you've alluded to a couple times is the fact about knowing your audience. You need to do your homework about who it is you're speaking to. At one point in my career, I was teaching nursing students. Another time, it was medical students. How I would present a topic. I'm a dietitian by profession. How I would approach a topic with that audience is not the same way that I would approach the topic with a group of parents. And I'm not being, again, condescending, but I'm just saying being respectful of your audience, where they are at, what is it they want to hear from you. So regardless of culture, I mean, that is one aspect of it, but it is important to know who it is that you're addressing, yes.
So with Toastmasters, you learn a lot more than building confidence, being able to speak comfortably in either a small group or a large group, but you also learn with almost 16,000 clubs and all the networking that the Yarmouth Toastmasters Club does with those other clubs. You learn a lot about other people, other regions, as you said, and other cultures.
Absolutely. Absolutely. There's a reason why this group has survived for so long. There's a need out there, and it's here to fill it.
And if somebody was interested in becoming a member, how do they go about that? What's the easiest way?
The easiest way is probably to message us on Facebook. We will get back to you, or you could send an email to our VP of Education, who's Shanna James, at hotmail.com. When we were doing Zoom, what we would do would be forward you a link with respect to the online meeting. On the 16th of September, we are going to be meeting live for the first time in a while in the program room at the library. The time of that meeting will be 5:15. We probably will be, I'm not sure if we're going to be doing a hybrid meeting at that point or not. This is something that we need to discuss with our group as we move forward.
Are your meetings on a monthly scale, bi-weekly scale? What's the timing?
We meet on the first, third, and fifth Thursday of the month.
Okay.
Duly noted.
Duly noted, yes, duly noted.
Well,
Drop by. It sounds like maybe you need to crawl out from underneath the microphone and come be a guest. Come be a guest at our club. We would love to have you as a guest.
Very kind of you.
absolutely.
Yes.
I think we'll definitely make sure that we make that happen.
Yeah, for sure. We can always use some. Well, I can always use some help. That's for sure.
Oh,
Janice,
me as well.
thank you so much. We've learned so much about Toastmasters International and the local club. Appreciate it, and we hope to see you soon.
Well, I hope to see you soon at our club too, and thank you for having me. Who knew I would be involved with a podcast? Another avenue that I could use my skill set.
Absolutely.
Thanks for the opportunity.
You're welcome. Our guest has been Janice Comeau. She's the current president of the Yarmouth Toastmasters Club. I'm Gary Nickerson,
And I'm Quinn Taggart.
and this has been Outside My Window.